Our Lord's Sermon on the Mount, explained by Saint Augustine, Book 2, on the latter part of our Lord's Sermon on the Mount contained in the 6th and 7th chapters of Matthew. Chapter 1. The subject of mercy, with the treatment of which the first book came to a close, is followed by that of the cleansing of the heart, with which the present one begins. The cleansing of the heart, then, is, as it were, the cleansing of the eye by which God is seen, and in keeping that single, there ought to be as great care as the dignity of the object demands, which can be beheld by such an eye. But even with this eye is in great part cleansed, it is difficult to prevent certain defilements from creeping insensibly over it, from those things which are wont to accompany even our good actions, as for instance the praise of men. If indeed not to live uprightly is hurtful, yet to live uprightly and not to wish to be praised, what else is this than to be an enemy to the affairs of men, which are certainly so much the more miserable, the less an upright life on the part of men gives pleasure? If therefore those among whom you live shall not praise you when living uprightly, they are in error. But if they shall praise you, you are in danger, unless you have a heart so single and pure that in those things in which you act uprightly, you do not so act because of the praises of men, and that you rather congratulate those who praise what is right, as having pleasure in what is good, than yourself because you would live uprightly even if no one were to praise you, and that you understand this very praise of you to be useful to those who praise you, only when it is not yourself whom they honor in your good life, but God, whose most holy temple every man is who lives well, so that what David says finds its fulfillment. In the Lord shall my soul be praised, the humble shall hear thereof and be glad. It belongs therefore to the pure eye not to look at the praises of men in acting rightly, not to have reference to these while you are acting rightly, i.e., to do anything rightly with the very design of pleasing men. For thus you will be disposed also to counterfeit what is good, if nothing is kept in view except the praise of man, who, inasmuch as he can't see the heart, may also praise things that are false. And they who do this, i.e., who counterfeit goodness, are of a troubled heart. No one, therefore, has a single, i.e., a pure heart, except the man who rises above the praises of men, and when he lives well, looks at him only and strives to please him, who is the only searcher of the conscience. And whatever proceeds from the purity of that conscience is so much the more praiseworthy, the less it desires the praises of men. Take heed, therefore, says he, that you do not your righteousness before men to be seen of them, i.e., take heed that you do not live righteously with this intent, and that you do not place your happiness in this, that men may see you. Otherwise you have no reward of your Father who is in heaven. Not if you should be seen by men, but if you should live righteously with the intent of being seen by men. For, were it the former, what would become of the statement made in the beginning of this sermon? You are the light of the world. A city that is set on hill can't be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, when it gives light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. But he did not set up this as the end, for he has not added, and glorify your Father who is in heaven. But here, because he is finding fault with this, if the end of your right action is there, i.e., if we act rightly with this design only of being seen of men, after he has said, take heed that you do not your righteousness before men, he has added nothing. And hereby it is evident that he has said this not to prevent us from acting rightly before men, but lest perchance we should act rightly before men for the purpose of being seen by them, i.e., should fix our eye on this and make it the end of what we have said before us. For the Apostle also says, if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. While he says in another place, please all men in all things, even as I also please all men in all things. And they who do not understand this think it a contradiction, while the explanation is that he has said he does not please men because he was accustomed to act rightly, not with the express design of pleasing men, but of pleasing God, to the love of whom he wished to turn men's hearts by that very thing in which he was pleasing men. Therefore, he was both right in saying that he did not please men, because in that very thing he aimed at pleasing God, and rightly in authoritatively teaching that we ought to please men, not in order that this should be sought for as the reward of our good deeds, but because the man who would not offer himself for imitation to those whom he wished to be saved could not please God, but no man possibly can imitate one who has not pleased him. As therefore that man would not speak absurdly who should say in this work, seeking a ship, it is not a ship but my native country that I seek. So the apostle also might fitly say, in this work of pleasing men, it is not men but God that I please, because I do not aim at pleasing men, but have it as my object that those whom I wish to be saved may imitate me. Just as he says of an offering that is made for the saints, not because I desire a gift, but I desire fruit, i.e., in seeking your gift, I seek not it, but your fruit. For by this proof it could appear how far they had advanced Godward when they offered that willingly which was sought from them, not for the sake of his own joy over their gifts, but for the sake of the fellowship of love. Although when he also goes on to say, otherwise you have no reward of your Father who is in heaven. He points out nothing else but that we ought to be on our guard against seeking man's praise as the reward of our deeds, i.e., against thinking we thereby attain to blessedness.